I just wrapped up another Q&A call inside Booked Out Cleaners. We had a great session. There were a lot of great questions and a lot of great conversations that were had. And one of the topics that got brought up was kind of about taking yourself out of the business. You know, having a business of autonomy that allows you to do the things you want and go on holidays and spend more time with your family and friends and just build a real lifestyle business. And we kind of went down these different rabbit holes of that. And we ended up on this topic of holidays because, you know, we all love holidays. We all want to take more of them, but we either don't have the time or we don't have the money or we don't have both. And I was talking about how about 6 months ago, I'd say, or maybe 9 months ago, I booked a return trip to America. So I booked a 5-week trip to America with no plan of what I was even going to be doing. I don't know why I booked it for so long to begin with, but I was like, I want to go to America. It seems like it could be fun. I've seen so many movies and I kind of like the culture. I know a lot of Americans. I just want to visit the country and really see what it's like and see what it's about and visit some of the stuff that I've been wanting to see for a while. And so I booked that trip ages ago, not thinking much of it. And I kind of booked that as a deadline because I've been in almost autopilot for a while now in my business because I run a semi-autonomous business, meaning that, I can take trips to the other side of the country on short notice and things will run smoothly without me and I'll get back and things will not only be settled and my team has not only held down the fort, but they've also grown the business. But, I'm still answering messages and there might still be a call or two here and there while I'm away. So I'm never fully disconnected from the business. And there's a few things that are in the way of that because I had to ask myself, I was like, what would really allow me to have a fully autonomous business that I can completely step away from? And if we go back a couple of months, I was still in that phase where I had a semi-autonomous business. I was able to, live life pretty freely. I had a good team that ran the business in lieu of me. And there were still some things that I was doing though that were just kind of, it was too parallel to my daily life. Like I couldn't not do it because I had a commitment to do it every day and it was like invoicing. So I was always big on anything to do with money I manage. So like payroll I don't do, but I'm the one that will download the ABA file and upload it into the bank system and then process all the pay slips. So someone else does payroll, but I'm the one that actually transfer the money. It takes like 30 seconds once a week, but I do that. But the other thing was invoicing. So invoicing takes like 2 hours every single day because we do so many cleans and we invoice a lot of cleans. So yeah, I was doing that. And there would be days where like I'd go out and I'd party or like I'd go down south with some friends and go on like a little, extended weekend trip. And I would get distracted and sidetracked and I would forget to invoice like 2 days of work. And 2 days of work for us is like $15,000. So I would forget to invoice $15,000 worth of work simply because I was living my life and it was just like I was blurring the lines between my work and just my lifestyle. And I was like, this is no good anymore. So I made the conscious decision to give up invoicing. I trained my accounts manager on how to do that. My admin officer / accounts manager trained her on how to do it. And I was like, why did I not do this sooner? I was so worried about, relinquishing that control over the finances that I never really considered it. I never even really contemplated it. I was like, what if I just gave this? Because invoicing is such a simple task. It's already set up there in the system. All the information's there. I could get anyone to do it. And so I got my admin officer / virtual assistant to do it. And she's now been doing that for a couple of months and we've had 0 issues there. Everything is invoiced on time. Nothing's ever missed. And I don't even have to check into the business at all. So yeah, it's been pretty lax, but there's still that like one thing that was lingering over my head where I was like, what is the one thing that I need to do to be able to fully disconnect from the business? Like if I wanted to just take off to Mexico or Tahiti or wherever I wanted to go, and if I like threw my phone in the ocean and came back a month later, would the business even still be there? Like, how could I know without a shadow of a doubt that the business would still function and grow completely without me? Like, what is the one thing that is in the way of that right now? And long story short, it was pretty much the call center that we got set up now. So like our biggest constraint is the phone. I obviously run the Perth location at the moment, so I'm not in a position where I can employ an operations manager full time. I could, but then I'd be in the red, which I don't really deem to be necessary at the moment because I can do it myself. So yeah, that's not really an option at this stage. And so I'm answering calls for Perth, and I'm also going back and forth with Bunbury and just sorting things out there. I'm like, if I can just fix this, if I can get something in place where I don't need to be on the phone, I don't need to man any sort of business phone and take any business calls, that would allow me to pretty much just take off and do whatever I want. And it would be like another layer of autonomy in the business where I could remove myself from. And so I had this idea for a little while, but I didn't really act on it. And then, I was like, well, I've got this America trip coming up, and I booked it, with this idea in mind that I need to motivate myself to do more to grow the business. Because like I said, I was in autopilot. I was just kind of cruising along, and we were growing steadily, but I wasn't really making any impact on the business. So I booked this trip, and a couple of months ago, I just had this idea. I was like, I'm going to make this trip my deadline for the call center, because the call center, if I set this up, it's the one thing that's going to allow me to have like full autonomy over my life and my business at this stage. Like, I've done everything else. This is the one thing that's in the way of my autonomy. And so I'm like, I've got this 5-week America trip coming up in October. I am going to work hard and get this call center set up, hire the virtual receptionist, train them, and get this all said and done before October 20th or whenever it is. And so I got like 3 months of work done in 2 weeks. Like the last couple of weeks, I got 3 months worth of work done. I'd done more in the last couple of weeks than I'd done in the previous like 6 months in the business, realistically. And it's because of something called Parkinson's law. So that's kind of what we talked about in that Q&A, long story short. So yeah, that was a bit of a tangent, but it's I'm going to tie it back in now. So I remember reading this book years ago. I think it was called like 0 to a Million or something, or like Your First Million. And in the book, it talks about the principle of setting deadlines for yourself and setting goals and ultimatums for yourself, like booking a holiday a year from now, and then setting a goal so that if you achieve that goal, you get to go on this holiday and enjoy it. And if you don't, the consequence of you not achieving that goal is that you can't go on this holiday, and you've probably pre-booked it and prepaid, and you can't get a refund. So there is a consequence to you not achieving the goal, or you not achieving the desired outcome. And it ties into this thing called Parkinson's law, which is where work expands to fill the time available. So if I tell someone that they've got 1 month to fulfill a task, let's say I tell Stacey she's got 1 month to, get one more commercial client, or she's got 1 month to create a new module inside of Notion. She is probably going to spend that whole month creating that module. But if I tell her she's got 1 week to create that same module inside Notion, she will probably do it, and it will probably be just as good, if not better. Because when we have something to do, we tend to expand the work to fill the time available. And that's why it's so important that we have to set deadlines, and we have to set goals, and we have to set, clear parameters for when we want to achieve stuff. Because I've been talking about doing this call center thing for quite a while now, but it's not until I really gave myself a timeline and set myself a deadline of this America trip, which is a 5-week long trip. I was like, if I don't get this done, I don't feel comfortable leaving the country for 5 weeks. And so I'm like, if I don't get this done, I have to not go to America, and I'm not going to get my money back for those flights and the stuff I booked and things like that. So I'm like, oh, this is a deadline, and it's like an ultimatum where if I don't achieve this outcome, if I don't achieve the desired result, there is a consequence for me. And that motivated me to do work. And I got, months and months worth of work done in a couple of weeks, because the deadline's creeping up. I hadn't started on it. I'd been stalling on it and procrastinating, and I just hadn't done anything. And it was because of Parkinson's law. I had been expanding the work to fill the time available, which at that time was all the time in the world. I'm like, it's whatever. We're still trotting along nicely. I can get this done. There's no real rush. But then I'm like, no, I've got this trip coming up. If I don't have this done before then, I don't feel comfortable leaving. And so, it goes back to that book I read. I'm pretty sure it's called 0 to a Million. And it was like, you have to set yourself goals and deadlines to achieve those goals. And there has to be a reward and consequence, because that is the real motivator. That is the real thing that's going to drive you to achieve what you want to achieve. And it's going to allow you to get so much work done and condense it down into such a shorter time frame than if you didn't have it at all. Because if I didn't have this trip coming up, I probably would have, prolonged this, the setup of this call center for another 3 to 6 months, because it's not like a necessity right now. We don't really need it. It's not a pressing issue, which is the thing. If you don't have an immediate problem, if you don't have an immediate issue, like a painful symptom that you have to fix right now, you will probably just expand the work to fill the time, which is like, indefinite. It's an indefinite amount of time. Okay. So, if you don't have a set date, pretty much goals will stretch out forever, which is why it's great to set goals, but you should also set deadlines and expectations and parameters for those goals. And there should be a reward and a consequence, which is why I like to set SMART goals, if you've heard of the concept of a SMART goal. Except with my SMART goals, I change the R in SMART to reward. There has to be a reward for you achieving the goal. And the T is timeline. So what is the timeline for achieving that goal? And on that same token, there should be a consequence on the back of that reward if you don't achieve the goal in that time frame. Because otherwise, where's the motivator? Where is the incentive for you to get it done in the time allocated? But anyway, if you don't have a set date, goals will stretch out forever. It's called Parkinson's law. It's I've been guilty of that, very guilty of that. I'm going to humble myself right now and say that I have been lazy more than once in my business. I'm quite lazy in nature. Like a lot of the things I do because I'm lazy. Like a lot of the systems I've set up, and the reason I delegate so much is because I'm lazy and I don't want to do things. So I'm always thinking like, how can I get as much done as possible without actually having to do anything? That is what I'm always trying to think. I think it was someone from Google, or I can't remember. It was Bill Gates, actually. Sorry, it was Bill Gates. He said, I choose a lazy person to do a hard job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it. So you can have two people. One can be lazy, one can be diligent and hardworking. Give them the same desired outcome or the same goal or the same task. The lazy person will get it done just as well as the hardworking person. They just find an easier way to do it. I am that lazy person. I find an easy way to achieve the desired outcome, which is essentially what I've done for the past 4-5 years in my business. Once I realized that I could harness my laziness for good. It's even more important for lazy people like me to have deadlines, because when you lock in a deadline, for example, flights booked to America in October, the brain will compress effort to fit into that window. So this forces prioritization. You start cutting out non-essentials and focusing on what truly moves the needle in your business. So you're going to get work that otherwise would have taken you months and months, and you condense it down and you compress it and you compress the effort and you get it done quicker. So some context for cleaning business owners: if you know you've got 12 months to get the business running without you, you'll start systemizing, hiring, and delegating faster than if it's an open-ended goal, meaning you don't have a set deadline, you don't have set parameters and metrics and KPIs and stepping stones along the way and things like that. And there's a commitment and consistency bias as well, because people want to act consistently with commitments they've made, especially when there's a visible or a financial cost involved, whether there's a reward or a consequence. So booking a non-refundable trip makes the commitment real. Your subconscious pushes you to act in the ways that justify that decision. If you book a refundable trip, if you book a refundable ticket to a concert, and you know that you have an out, you know that if you fail and you don't get to the goal and you fall short of it, you're like, well, I can just refund the ticket. I can renege on these plans and it's fine. If you don't have an actual consequence, which is important, the consequence is just as important as the reward. If you don't have a consequence, trust me, you're never going to get to the point where you get the reward for yourself. And if you do, it's not going to be in a timely manner. So that's why that's important. There's that commitment and there's that consistency bias. So booking the non-refundable trip, it makes it real. A lot of you will probably think that this is like a crazy take, or this is like some extremist view, which is completely unnecessary and just, it's almost like gambling with your time and your energy and your life. That's fine for you to think. That's your prerogative. But for me, this is how I get stuff done. This is what's worked for me. The first time I ever took myself out of the business, I booked a 4-week trip to the Gold Coast on like 1 month's notice. And I put my management in place. I put a bunch of SOPs and systems in place. And I just left. I didn't think much of it because I set that deadline. It was creeping up. I had to get it done. I did it. I came back. Everything was great. And I was like, this works. I'm going to keep doing this. And the reason it works so well is because of loss aversion. Humans are twice as motivated to avoid a loss as they are to achieve an equivalent gain. It's why fear is such a big motivator in marketing, because the fear of losing something is much greater than the desire for gain. Like canceling a prepaid holiday feels like a loss, money wasted, opportunity missed. Whereas like that pain, it's going to motivate more than the reward alone. It's the loss aversion. It's a much more powerful emotion and motivator in the human psyche. And time-bound goals equals clarity plus focus. Vague goals like I'll get my business ready one day, like open-ended goals and stuff like that, don't activate any urgency. But time-bound goals, they tell your brain that this matters now. That urgency mobilizes energy and resources. This is why SMART goals, like I just talked about, the specific, measurable, achievable, reward and time-bound focus goals, that's why they work. And so by giving yourself a countdown clock, you naturally filter out these distractions and you stop saying yes to these low-value clients and tasks and other things because there's this looming deadline that's hanging above your head. And it's going to create so much more mental clarity and alleviate stress because open loops not only drive action, but psychologically, unfinished tasks and open-ended goals, they create this mental tension until they get resolved. So booking a holiday or whatever you want to do, it creates an open loop. And you must get the business to a point where you can leave. Your brain keeps nudging you towards closing that loop rather than just kind of wandering around blind and even just sitting on autopilot like I've done so many times in my business when things feel like they're going great and you can just kind of take a sit back when you know there's things that you could be doing to better yourself and better the business. So yeah, that's something I wanted to talk about today because it just I was inspired by that Q&A call we had to put this out there. It's something that I've been doing. I've been practicing and exercising for years in my business and it's worked. It's gotten me off my butt and it's gotten me to achieve stuff and get things done when I'm a particularly lazy person by nature. So it's been a great exercise for me. It's worked for me and I'm doing it again this year. So practicing what I preach and, when you book something in advance, it's like you're playing a psychological trick on yourself. Without a deadline, your business goals drift and you just wander around aimlessly, not knowing what's next, not knowing when you're going to achieve what you want to achieve. And, furthermore, not even knowing what you want to achieve. But when there's a date locked in, that Parkinson's law kicks in. You suddenly work faster and sharper because the clock is now ticking. And on top of that, we humans hate to lose. So losing a holiday you've already paid for feels painful. So you'll do anything to make sure it happens. The combination of urgency and commitment and the fear of loss is why booking a trip can be one of the best accountability tools for a business owner, hands down. And it doesn't have to be a trip, doesn't have to be a holiday, but it's a great one to have because you're removing yourself from your physical business. You're removing yourself and you're taking yourself to a completely different place, not only mentally, but physically. You can check out of the business mentally and you can also give yourself a holiday and take a load off and see how the business performs without you. If you don't do that, if you can set little goals first, but I think everyone should set a big goal, and I think it should be a holiday. You should go visit family that you've been wanting to visit, or visit a country you've been wanting to go to, or even just a city that you've been wanting to visit. But you can start with small things like if you usually have Friday nights busy, if you're usually cleaning on a Friday night, set yourself a goal that you're going to go to like a Broadway show or a musical or just see a movie or have a night out with your partner or family, and just set it for a Friday like 4 weeks or 2 months from now. And then work backwards and figure out how you can make your Fridays free going forward. And that can be your deadline and your motivator and your KPI for getting that done. And then you can slowly build up to bigger things like what I do. And trust me, it's scary. Like I was scared when I went away the first time for a month and I left my business and went to the Gold Coast. That was scary. But once I did it for the first time, I was like, I can do this again. That was a great exercise. It worked. It got my business to the point where I wanted it to be. And I also got to start to live the lifestyle that I wanted to live. So I'm doing it again. And my goals and my ultimatums for myself are only going to get bigger and more audacious and more crazy as time goes on. So it's a great exercise that I do. And I just thought I'd share that with you because maybe that's going to land with some of you out there, some of my fellow lazy business owners that, want to have an autonomous business, a business that works for you and not the other way around. And this is a great way to do that by, not only rewarding yourself, but also giving yourself clear deadlines, clear expectations, and clear parameters for achieving the things that you want to achieve. So with that being said, thank you for listening to another episode of Self-Made. I think next episode is the 90th episode, if this isn't number 90 already. So, wow, we've come a long way. We're very, very close to 100. I'm very excited to hit that. That was like one of my biggest goals when I started a business. I didn't even have a podcast yet. And I was like, one of my goals is I want to do a podcast and I want to do at least 100 episodes. So I'm very proud of myself for coming this far. If you've been listening since the start, then wow, first of all, can't believe you've been putting up with me for this long. Can't believe you've been listening to my voice in your ears for like 2 years now. But if you're new here, I appreciate you just as much. Treat everyone the same. I am impartial to all my listeners. So thank you so much for your support. I hope you've been enjoying the podcast lately. I'm feeling a lot more confident speaking, and I feel like, I've got a wealth of experience and knowledge now, and I feel like I've really earned the right to be talking about the things that I'm talking about now. But all that aside, I love doing what I'm doing. I love talking about this. I love the game. I love cleaning. I love all of it. So again, thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you again in the next episode.